All human beings are constantly setting up the game subconsciously. So you're setting up the game of relationships, you're setting up the game of finances, you're setting up the game of your body, and so you're kind of following predictable pathways. But you're also struggling with some of these things. If I'm somebody who's struggled with money, and I know that saving money is really good for me, why would I spend my last $100 at the mall? Like, why would I do that? Until you start to consider, well, maybe what I'm doing is I'm setting up the struggle. Maybe that's the game for me subconsciously. But if you take that same principle with your body, with your love life, with your career, see how you fundamentally relate to yourself is very deep, very profound. But you're so wrapped up in the surface issues of your life, you can't really see what's driving it all. How come I turned out this way? And where am I headed? Where's this going for me? How does this keep unfolding for me? And the surprising thing for a lot of people is whatever you're struggling with today, until you finally understand what's driving, you'll continue to wrestle with that until you die. So when somebody talks, they're in fact speaking from the world that they're in. But people don't experience themselves as being in a world. We experience ourselves as being in the world. But you're not. You're in a very biased, a very kind of slanted, a very kind of weighted place in life. You're not interacting with life. You're interacting with you, interacting with life. A human being starts to really get empowered with themselves when they start to make sense to themselves. Like your own actions, your own thoughts, your own emotional states. When all that starts to kind of logically click for you, to me, those are the beginnings of true awareness. Your perspective is in everything you hear, everything you see, everything you say, everything you experience, every feeling, every emotion, all of it. That's your perspective. And it's hard to see it because you're in it. So you can't really witness it. So when I started to do work on myself, it was my relationship with my parents. And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever really confronted that was just a point of view. Like my entire past is only a perspective. It's not the actuality of my past. It's the past of the eyes and the ears of the person who was in it. But there was a lot of people in that past with their own eyes and ears, with a whole different takeaway from it than I had. See, once you discover something, right, and it's like a true discovery, it's a gestalt moment. It's like the black cat, because you can see the tentacles and you can see how it's spread throughout your life, and you can see when you're being given by this thing why you would take the pathway you would take. Suddenly I made sense. And when I can see the pathway, I don't even have to avoid the pathway. There's just no way I'm going down there because I see the carnage. I get what this has done in my life. Now, we're all wired as human beings to create our own reality. The only problem is we have no sense of creating it. There's no experience of like, yeah, I'm putting this world together for myself so that I can survive in life. Your brain is putting the building blocks together. It's like, yeah, people are this way. Yeah, I'm this way. Yeah, the world is this way. And so I'm just building evidence for it. But then suddenly as a human being, there's like this growing sense of like, there's way more to me that I had forgotten. And I'd literally forgotten that when I was a kid, I was so loving. I'd seen that I'd created this dynamic between my mom and I. I wasn't free. When I was around her, I had to be a certain way. And the way that I was disconnected. Right? Like, you're there, I'm here. And what was in between us was all of that narrative that I'd built up over the years. Right? This is my victory, right? Not like I've turned out from what she did and what she gave me. I've actually just turned out, you know, as a reaction to all the mistakes that she made. And so as a man, when I started to do this work, I realized that I'd spent most of my childhood in judgment of her. So I had this realization that I'd really just blamed her. And so it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went through all the spaces: blame, guilt, fault. So I called her up and she said, hello. And I just said, I'm sorry. That was the first thing I said. I said, I'm sorry. And she's like, for what? And I said, I just never knew what it was like for you to raise a family almost on your own. And I just blamed you. And I've been judging you, and I just want you to know I'm just really sorry for making you wrong for all that you did and didn't do. And there was a silence, and I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too, baby. And I had in that moment, like it was like, oh my gosh, like the skies opened up. Because all of this that I'd been holding back came out. Right? And I didn't even do it so that she would do anything. I did it because this needed to be said. This needed to get out of the way. I was starting to realize how tight I'd become. I wasn't. And I wanted to be a loving man. I just didn't know how to do it. And now I remember even saying that to my wife, at the time, like, I don't really know how to do love, which is bullshit. Everybody knows how to do love. You might have forgotten, but you need to get back in touch with it. So from that moment, I really started to engage with her from this loving place, she didn't have to do anything. I was just going to love her. I'd spent my whole life waiting for people to love me. And it was really my job to love people, like the way they are. Like it was the whole dynamic changed. When I took that off the table, when I took responsibility for being the guy that I say I am, then suddenly people are free to be themselves. I don't need you to change. I don't need you to say or do something to make me feel different. I just need you to be whatever you say you are. And then in that space, I get to explore all the paradigms of who I am. I had to question myself with what would it have been like for me to share my life with somebody who wanted me to be different all the time. It would have been exhausting. If I want to be a loving man, I'm just going to have to go for it. And part of being a loving human being is what's also on the table is something called disappointment. So love's like that. When you walk into love, or rather when you express love for a human being, you have to realize part of that is disappointment. Or you might even end up resorting to anger or frustration. But that's only because at some level, if you look, when you truly love, you can never be hurt. And to me, that's the all-encompassing nature of love. And that as human beings, what we've done is we've brought these things in that focus it and filter it and in many ways block it. And if you really want to have love in your life, you have to realize you're not a receiver of that thing. You're the broadcaster. It's coming out of you. And you get to say, you get to be expressive of your love with another or not. But if you're not being expressive of your love for another, stop leaning on the notion that it's them and really accept that this is me. The notion of loving another is your agreement with yourself. It's not your agreement with them. In fact, when you're buying into the notion of loving another, you got to really relate to it like this is what I'm up to as a human being. And I might choose to not love you. You might do things or say things that I feel as if go against what I value as a human being. But I should also be cognizant of that I could continue to love you, but I'm choosing not to. I'm unwilling to change or give up on the integrity of that for some passing emotional quirk.